Well, good evening, Colorado and the Rocky Mountain Mile High region. What is up? It is Denver Sports Tonight. It's also Orange and Blue Today, as we do on Fridays. Mace, I like this Friday tradition we've got.
Today, tonight, tomorrow, and always.
Orange and Blue. That's right. We're here to talk a little Broncos pregame. Now, we're in West Virginia, and Mace, you'll be going to the game against the New York Jets. I'll be going back to Denver tonight. But, man, what a week. Before we get into the matchup and Bo Nix, what a week here in West Virginia.
What an unusual week. What a wet week.
A long, strange trip it's been.
Yes. It seems like it's been raining nonstop for the last 3 days. It hasn't. There have been breaks. The Broncos had practice on Wednesday, and it wasn't raining. The Broncos started their practice Thursday, and it wasn't raining. That quickly changed. And, of course, one drawback of holding your football practices at the Greenbrier in White Sulphur Springs, West Virginia, is there's no indoor facility.
Right.
You have an indoor facility back in Denver. If you had stayed in Tampa for the week, you would have had an indoor facility. The Broncos actually did their walkthrough Saturday over at the University of South Florida.
Okay.
At their indoor facility. Of course, Tampa got sideswiped by a hurricane on Thursday.
Yes.
So, tropical storm force winds. It's not nothing, but all I'll say is, as my daughter came to understand a couple of summers ago, there was a tropical storm that passed over where she was sleeping, and she didn't wake up.
Okay.
So now, yeah. I mean, that being said, extensive damage to other parts of the South. So, Tampa dodged the bullet. But the point being, you could have done it down there, perhaps.
So was
they
this
decided
a good
to do
idea
it
or
here.
not? Like, let's just cut to the chase. Was this a good idea or not? And again, if the weather was good, we'd be saying this is a spectacular idea.
Yeah.
Sean Payton's done this with the Saints. Other teams do this. But to put you on the spot, Mace, like, okay, I mean, there are weather apps.
But you can't predict the weather weeks out.
Yeah, this plan was put in place a while ago.
It's a dice roll. Now, it's interesting. Sean Payton had a very prominent role in developing the Sports Performance Center at the Greenbrier, which has hosted multiple NFL teams over the years, and just this summer held a chunk of Cleveland Browns training camp.
Right.
So there's a lot that NFL teams like here. The thing that they're missing, the element they're missing, is the ability to go inside and practice. And that is an element that, at this point, every NFL team has at least access to someplace indoors at this point.
Yeah, right. Yep. It's a different time. It's a different era, but they're here, and they're here to look to continue the win streak or to begin a win streak. They got one. You need two to call it a streak, and up next are the Jets. But we've talked about an Orange Blue today, and if you don't listen or you haven't yet listened here and you're listening on 104.3 The Fan, please check out Orange Blue today on YouTube and like and comment and share and subscribe and all those sorts of things.
So that you never miss a vid.
You never miss a vid. But we talk about, like, okay, making Bo Nix better or taking this momentum that he's built clearly with the Tampa game, his best game, no touchdowns passing, but no interception. So clearly his best game, Mace. How do they build on that?
Continue doing the things that worked. Continue honing that timing. One thing that was working for Bo Nix, and it's something that we saw in real time. You and I went back and rewatched the film. We watched the JT O'Sullivan breakdown, and JT was pointing out how often Bo is getting the ball out as the receiver is starting their break.
Anticipation.
So the anticipatory throws, he is making those now. That's a huge sign, because when you're anticipating the break on the route by the receiver, at that point, you're creating something that is really hard to defend, because the corner is reacting to the break. By the time they're arriving, the ball is usually there.
Right.
And so that's why we talk about anticipatory throws as something that are very crucial for any quarterback in this game, because when you get that working, you are able to generate separation. It's not a huge window, but it's enough. And one thing to Bo Nix's credit is he's making the anticipatory throws. He also knows that an NFL window is not like a college window. The NFL windows are tight. I mean,
they're about the size of our laptops here.
Whereas the college windows, we're doing this at a huge table. The college windows can sometimes be
wide open,
as wide as this long table, about what we'd say about 8 feet, 9 feet.
A little bit longer than that, but college windows are wide open. And I'm not going to name any names, but let's just say this, Mace. You and I both know veteran quarterbacks that are see it, throw it guys that cannot make anticipatory throws. Veteran quarterbacks, dozens of games, and they're still see it, throw it guys. Bo already, and again, he's not complete. This isn't finished. But in 3 games, he's shown the ability to get better, cut down on those turnovers, interceptions, and then throw with anticipation like he really started to do against Tampa.
I think overall, the work has gotten better with each passing week.
Yes.
It's not going to always be a straight incline. So let's make it clear. This isn't going to be, well, Bo's going to be better on Sunday than he was against Tampa Bay. No, we're going to get into the New York Jets front and the kind of problems they pose, starting with Quinnen Williams, working from the inside out. This is a team that felt it could trade John Franklin Myers, that said, we don't necessarily need to get a contract resolution with Hassan Reddick on the edge. And they have had no problem generating pressure despite not having those 2 players.
Yes.
That's how deep the Jets are in their front 7, how strong they are in the pass rush, and they're not doing it by having to blitz.
Yes.
So
it's very dangerous.
It's going to be tough to get those windows. You're going to need those anticipatory throws, not only because you've got Sauce Gardner, a very good cornerback, although grabby. He should get called for illegal contact more than he does. But you have a team that has the resources to put in the coverage, so you're not going to have as many of those windows. And, oh, by the way, because they can drop 7, they can afford to have somebody spying on Bo Nix, so this may not be the best running game for Bo Nix when he escapes the pocket either.
That's part of it with Bo Nix. I do love when we talked to Joe Lombardi on Thursday this week here in West Virginia. He talked about the success is not going to go to Bo Nix's head. Here's what Coach Lombardi had to say.
I certainly don't think it's gone to his head by any stretch. Every day is a new day. Every game's a new game. And so, I think Babe Ruth said yesterday's home runs don't win today's games, and yesterday's strikeouts don't lose today's game. So I think that's kind of his mentality. I don't think he'll ever get too high and start taking things for granted. So he's just been back to work like he has the first 2 weeks.
Were those lyrics to an 80s song? Every day's a new day. Every game's a new game. Joe Lombardi. Was he in Flock of Seagulls? He does have great hair.
Was he a Flock of Seagulls fan back in the day?
I don't know. Maybe
he would have been he would have been about what, like 11, 12 years old or so?
Maybe, yeah.
When
maybe
the Flock was a thing.
Right. But we know Joe Lombardi helping out Bo Nix. We'll get to the running backs in just a little bit, but you've got to help out this young man to that continued growth that you want to see from Bo. It's going to take everybody. It's going to take that offensive line. We'll talk more about them later on in the show. But certainly these backs also have to help as well. And that's, part of Joe Lombardi's recipe with Sean Payton, of course, calling the plays.
Yeah.
A much better called game against Tampa. So we're praising Bo for what he did against Tampa, but Sean did a much better job of making Bo comfortable.
Now, the thing I'll ask you, Cease, is this.
Sure.
Do you think Sean Payton returns to the ambush well to start the game, or do you think he eases into it? Because I think Tampa Bay was ripe for an ambush.
Injuries in the secondary, injuries up front. The Jets are a different animal.
Now, the Jets have had a lot of time off because they played last Thursday, so they've got the 10-day gap. They've got a trip overseas right after this. So this is sort of in some ways it's a letdown type of game, but this is also a healthier team than the Bucs were.
Yes.
And so I'm not sure this is the come out and attack type of scenario that you saw in Tampa last week. This may be more the kind of set up, jab, jab, jab. Maybe what you're talking about here is discombobulating with tempo.
Mm-hmm.
I mentioned it last week. Maybe this is the week where you say, okay, let's go no huddle on a series at some point late first quarter, early second quarter.
Yeah, something we
Change it
talked
up.
about on Orange and Blue today. And us as Star Wars nerds, I will say this. Prepare your troops for a surface attack. Yeah, it's going to be a surface attack.
Run the ball.
And run the ball. Run the damn ball. Super quick before we get to the running backs. Did Tampa overlook the Broncos, and will the Jets overlook the Broncos?
Tampa
Because it
Bay
certainly looked like Tampa
definitely overlooked the Broncos.
They overlooked the Broncos.
And some of their players admitted after
And
the
they got
game
got.
they were a little happy.
Yes.
And you
Well,
and
too
I,
happy.
that is one thing. I don't mean to sprain our shoulders, patting ourselves on the back, but that was something we nailed last week. You had a Bucs team coming off of an emotional win in Detroit. Detroit had ended their season back in January.
Yep.
Very much watching that game in week 2, it felt like a playoff game to Tampa
A
Bay.
playoff preview again.
Yes,
you know?
and they had to come back down, and Sean Payton, he's had a lot of success going into Tampa over the years, so that alone should have told you don't take the Broncos lightly. Forget about the Broncos, but Sean Payton has won quite a few games there at Raymond James Stadium.
Yes.
He was ready. He's had a lot of success against Todd Bowles over the years. Now you're going to against the Jets. It's a different dynamic. I don't think you're going to catch them napping in the same way that you caught the Bucs napping.
Right.
Yes, they've got the trip to London coming up against the Minnesota Vikings, and then they got the Buffalo Bills after that. But I think the Jets are viewing this more as, okay, this is a game we've got to have.
It's like a warm-up game.
Yeah.
For those two, really tough opponents.
Let's get ourselves in a good mindset before we go take on Minnesota, Buffalo, Pittsburgh, a stretch that might define their season. I think they're going to be ready for this game. And of course, if they're not already ready, that there's the Nathaniel Hackett angle.
Of course.
It's not being discussed as much this year. Of course, it was the dominant angle going into
Sean
the Jets
Payton
game last year.
it
Yes.
at the podium here in
He
West
did.
Virginia.
He did. But Nathaniel Hackett has his BFF at quarterback now.
Yes, Aaron Rodgers.
And I think he's going to want to show something with his toy.
Yes. Yeah. And Sean Payton earlier this week talked about what he sees when he watches Aaron Rodgers this year.
You feel like you're seeing, the quarterback we all remember. I mean, he's quick, the ball's out. He's got great command of what they do. 180 penalties drawn with his hard count, and so historically speaking, he's one of the top quarterbacks we've ever seen, and certainly in that area. So he does a great job getting to plays they want to get to. You see the skill set that we all saw prior to the injury.
You see the skill set. It's Aaron Rodgers versus Bo Nix. Bo even talked this week about how kind of cool it was to play against Aaron Rodgers after watching him for so long, growing up as a kid, slinging the rock in college at Auburn and Oregon. Like, this is where Bo, I'm not saying we'll go toe-to-toe with Rodgers, because honestly, Mace, I think this game comes down to the ground game for both teams, for the Broncos, but also for the Jets. Again, we'll get into that more in this next segment. Rodgers versus Nix. We get to see it.
There's not going to be many opportunities for Bo Nix and Aaron Rodgers to cross paths. Think about this. When Aaron Rodgers made his first NFL start, Bo Nix was 8 years old.
8 years old. Okay, probably just starting to play tackle football.
Yeah.
At that time.
A little perspective there.
Right.
And now Aaron Rodgers is 40. It's interesting you mentioned the ground game with the Jets because last year, that's where the Jets won. When they came
When
into
Breece Hall went
Denver
nuts.
with Zach Wilson at quarterback and ground down the Broncos. They weren't doing much through the air. It wasn't a particularly effective offensive performance except with Breece Hall and the work on the ground. That was probably the worst game I thought for the Broncos defensive line last year because of the way the Jets manhandled the Broncos up front. There was acreage. There was an acreage of space for Breece Hall to run because the Broncos defensive linemen, they were taken out of the play so easily. And then the guards easily could go to the second level, take out the inside linebackers, and there was oodles of room to run there.
Right.
It was easy for Breece Hall because the Broncos were dominated up front. Well, as Vance Joseph talked about on Thursday, he said it's a new year.
Yes.
Because it actually came up because he was asked about how the defense, how far it had come since last September. And it did make progress after that, although there were some hiccups like the Detroit game where it showed that they had trouble dealing with a team that had a lot of speed and a lot of weapons. Well, we're sitting here in week 4 coming off a Broncos win over Tampa Bay against a Bucs team that has plenty of weapons, and they shut them down.
Yes.
So that is a huge sign for this defense. Vance Joseph said, hey, this is a different year than last year. And while the improvement in the back half of last season matters, it is a completely different landscape, and the Jets should have significantly more trouble running on this Denver defense than they did last year.
Yeah, more on replacing Alex Singleton in just a little bit. But before we get out of here in this first segment, again, Denver Sports Tonight doubled with Orange and Blue today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason here on our YouTube channel for Denver Sports, also on 104.3 The Fan. It's a minute long, but I think we have to set up the Joe Lombardi thing.
Okay.
Because if it's Knicks versus Rodgers, it's also Breece Hall and Braylon Allen against
I'm glad you got Braylon Allen, by the way.
Bidet and Javonte, maybe, and Jaleel McLaughlin. So let's set up, I'll let you set up this Joe Lombardi clip. We'll play it. It's a little bit longer than we normally play on the radio, but we want the full context of what Joe Lombardi said.
Well, he's asked specifically about Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin and their production because right now both of them are averaging only 2.2 yards per carry.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, 2 and 2.
It's like the love connection.
That's exactly where I was going with
back in
this.
2 and 2.
That's not bad when you're talking about Chuck Woolery going to commercial back in the day. But if your running backs are averaging 2 and 2 per carry, you've got a problem. Think of it this way. Jaleel McLaughlin and Javonte Williams, they have 92 yards combined on 42 carries. Tyler Bidet has almost as many yards, 86, on 10 carries. Not even 25% of the combined carry total of McLaughlin and Williams, but has almost as many yards.
Yes.
Bidet averaging 8.6 yards per carry. By the way, even if you take out that 43-yard gallop, he's got 9 for 43, which has him at 4.8 per carry.
Fantastic.
So remove that outlier run, he is still very much more productive.
Yes.
Than Jaleel McLaughlin and Javonte Williams. So the question becomes, okay, do you keep feeding the ball? I mean, look, the buzz all week has been, Tyler Bidet potentially getting more work.
Yeah.
He's on the 53-player roster now. Do the Broncos hand him the keys? I would say probably doesn't seem like they're going to completely hand him the keys. And as Joe Lombardi discussed, there's still some faith in Javonte Williams and Jaleel McLaughlin to get things going.
I don't know if there's a specific step you have to take. I mean, obviously Tyler got in there and had the big run, and he's a guy that we really like. But the run game's one of those things where not every run's going to be a 20-yard gain, and you stick with it. I think you know the players that you have. Just because the stats are telling you that they're not gaining a bunch of yards doesn't mean that they've all of a sudden turned to crap. So you just keep handing them the ball and know that we'll keep getting better, and the plan will keep getting better, and we'll keep blocking better, and their big runs are coming. So it's just like anything. It's it's tempting when you've run the ball a few times early and you're not gaining yards to just say, well, the heck with this. We're going to just start throwing. And the run game is one of those things that if you stick with it, you're going to start busting some runs. And so it's just a patience thing, and obviously just getting better when we do run it.
Run it and keep running it and run it some more. But is it Tyler Bidet? Fans want to know who's starting, Mace. I don't think that really matters necessarily because Javonte could start, but Bidet could out-touch him, and I anticipate that's what will happen. I hope that's what happens, Mace.
Well, the thing where he said, in general, with the running game, you stick with it. That's something you have to do, and frankly, it's something that Sean Payton has not always done. Sometimes Sean Payton gets a little bit impatient with the ground game. You get in that moment, it's an emotional call. You look, we're behind 10 points in the fourth quarter, and then all of a sudden you're running on first down more than you would like. But Joe Lombardi's saying there that just because the stats are telling you they're not gaining a bunch of yards doesn't mean they've all of a sudden turned to crap. Talking about McLaughlin and Williams. Well, McLaughlin, it hasn't been a productive start to the season so far, but he was pretty productive in spurts last year, and his per carry average bore that out. Javonte Williams, we're talking about now 13 straight games where he hasn't had 4 yards per carry.
And almost a calendar year. And when he did have 4 yards a carry against the Packers in week 7, it was the only game that he did that in 2023.
At what point do you just say this is who he is post-injury? Unfortunately. I mean, he's worked his tail off to get back.
Yes.
But this isn't the try-hard league. This is a results-oriented business, and unfortunately, Javonte Williams hasn't produced. And by the way, while the run blocking hasn't been to the standard that it was last year, it did get better last week in Tampa than it had been the previous 2 games. And Javonte Williams, 12 yards on 5 carries and a fumble. And this is the other thing. The thing that Javonte Williams had in his favor was that he wasn't putting the ball on the ground. Last Sunday he did.
Yeah.
So what is he bringing in the running game? Now he brings something in the passing game.
Certainly.
And that's the interesting thing here. He's actually getting some yardage in space. As you have said, maybe the Samaje Perine pass catching blocking role, third downs, late in halves, maybe that is the spot for him going forward.
Maybe that's the best way to use him going forward. We'll see if the Denver Broncos can do just that. Jillian McLaughlin, before we're out of here, 60 seconds. Does his role stay the same, even if Tyler Bidet gets more work?
It may well stay the same, or it may go back to the role last year.
What do you prefer?
Well, he's improved as a blocker, not a devastating blocker, but he's holding his own enough to where he doesn't have to be a tell anymore. Mm-hmm. And let's just take that touchdown last week. Nobody else on the team scores in that situation. It's a bad call. It's poorly executed. He does that on his own. And we have yet to see Javonte Williams kind of do something on his own in the way that we've seen with Jillian McLaughlin.
Yes.
I think you kind of play status quo with him.
Okay. To me, and I've said it time and time again, running the ball is about creating your own space. Javonte used to do that by breaking tackles. Mace, one of the tells, is this just who he is? He doesn't break tackles anymore, or not many. Last year, it was 1 out of every 20. Not sure what the number is this year. But when he was a rookie, it was 1 of every 6 tackles. He would break a tackle every 6 carries. Now it's 1 of every 20, might be less than that now. So with Jaleel, he creates his space with speed, and that's good news for the Denver Broncos. It is a special edition of Denver Sports Tonight, also orange and blue today. If you happen to be watching us on YouTube, thanks. We appreciate you for our growing audience. And on Denver Sports Tonight, yeah, we love you guys. Thanks for listening to The Fan. We appreciate you. Make sure to check out our YouTube channel where you can see Mace and I every single day talking about the Denver Broncos. But coming up next, How difficult will it be for the Broncos to replace Alex Singleton, now out for the year? We'll tell you next. Look at that. Professional. All right. Tell me when you're ready, and we'll give it a go.
Let's go.
All right, 3, 2, 1. Welcome back, everyone. It is Denver Sports Tonight and a special edition of Orange and Blue today as well. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason in West Virginia with the Denver Broncos. And it started, I could play it just right off the top where we show up, we're excited to talk. Well, first off, we're excited to watch practice, and you're like, where's Alex Singleton? Mm-hmm. That's what you said.
Let's talk about the Wednesday because we wake up to the news.
Yes, right. It
breaking
started with that.
That the Broncos are adding Quan Alexander to their practice squad.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Okay.
They were looking at inside linebacker depth.
They've been looking at linebackers all year.
Right.
They brought in Christian Welch. So we know it's a position where the Broncos don't appear to be satisfied.
Right.
And then we take the field at the Greenbrier to take in the practice.
And you always take inventory every day.
I have my binoculars. I'm taking attendance, and we don't see Alex Singleton. And by the way, the players usually have typical spots in which they align for stretching at the start of practice.
Yes.
So it was the first thing. You didn't see that beard and that spectacular flowing mane of hair.
Fantastic hair, right.
Didn't see it out there.
Mm-hmm.
And then we get the news that a subsequent examination following Sunday's game revealed that Alex Singleton tore his ACL. He met with media after the game. What happened was he reported some soreness. They gave him an examination. He had torn ACL. It'll be a couple of weeks before he can have surgery. He was out there at practice, watching practice.
Right.
A day after the announcement, he was standing on the sideline. His knee was wrapped.
Right.
Definitely moving with a limp, understandably.
Yes. Careful with the steps. He
Yes.
walked right by me. I said hi. We can't talk to him when he's on IR, but I did say hi. I didn't do the awkward wave like I did with Bo Nix in week 1, but he was out there. Now, how do you replace him? It's a shorter answer from Sean Payton. I think everybody wants to know this answer.
Yes.
Sean Payton barely said anything, so here's 8 seconds of Sean Payton not telling us anything.
We've got, a handful of guys. We've got probably 2 or 3 different directions we'll go, and then we'll just see how it goes.
Okay, handful of guys, Mace.
2 or 3 different directions. Let's talk about some of those directions. You have Christian Welch and Justin Sternad on the 53-player roster.
Okay.
You have Lavelle Bailey on the practice squad.
Right.
We're going to get to Quan Alexander and Zach Cunningham later, just because you bring them in. It's going to take time to get up to speed. With Quan Alexander, you've got to ascertain his health. He's coming off the torn Achilles that he had last year when he was playing for the Pittsburgh Steelers. So, but these guys have to learn the scheme anyway. It's not a matter of plug and play, although they did kind of plug and play Christian Welch, and they got him in for some snaps in week 1 and week 2. Didn't play any defensive snaps in week 3. So I think you'll kind of go down the list here to see who's there. This game may be more of the guys and in fact, with some of the practice squad moves, you've moved Tyler Bidet up to the 53.
Yes.
Lil Jordan Humphreys on the 53. Mike Burton is on the 53. So you're not using practice squad elevations on them. You're allowed 2 elevations per week. Maybe this is a week where if Alexander and Cunningham aren't ready, maybe this is a week you elevate Lavelle Bailey and see what he has. Otherwise, I think we'll probably see plenty of Christian Welch, maybe even a little bit of Justin Sternad.
Yeah.
Getting a shot. Now,
Sternad would have to be chomping at the bit for his opportunity.
Yeah.
He's a special teams ace.
You've got to go back to 2021 for the last time he had a real, true opportunity at inside linebacker.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, it didn't go well. You had
younger player, though. You know what I mean? Maybe now a little more experience, a little more hunger to prove that you're more than just a special teams guy. Justin Sternad, we've had some great debates about Sternad, starting at the combine where he was hurt and he tried to compete and he put up some of the worst numbers at the linebacker position at the scouting combine.
Yep.
We'll give him a break for that. And he did have a chance, but that was so long ago, Mace. It seems like it's definitely a different team. I'll quote Vance Joseph, hey, last year doesn't matter. Well, 4 years ago doesn't matter.
He has literally not played a defensive snap since December 2021.
Wow.
Everything since then is special teams. His last start, he started 5 games early in 2021. Remember, after Josie Jewell went down, he stepped in, and that was his shot. The last start he made, that was kind of a disaster night for the Broncos. Remember, and I had to go look this up.
Okay.
Justin Sternad and Micah Kaiser were the inside linebackers. Okay. You went up against Case Keenum and the Cleveland Browns. Case Keenum was the story going into that game. He was not the story during the game. The story during the game was at inside linebacker, Sternad and Kaiser were overrun by Dearness Johnson.
Yeah. It was like his only game. Then Dearness is fine back, but he had a big game against the Broncos that day.
Yeah, he's now with the Jaguars. He's still kicking around the league.
Sure, good veteran. Right?
But the only thing that kept Dearness Johnson from having more than 146 yards on his 22 carries, so he was right there. He nearly averaged 7 yards per attempt. The only thing that kept him from racking up more was because Cleveland was able to take a knee at the end.
Right.
It was a 17-14 game, but because the Broncos were so thoroughly dominated up the middle, it felt like a 2 or 3 score loss.
Right.
They could, and that's basically, that was the last we saw of Sternad as a starter. By the next game, the Broncos had basically turned over the inside linebacker position. The next game, they traded for Kenny Young, and they moved Baron Browning inside and began starting him there.
We'll put a pin in that Browning discussion for a later day.
Yes.
Watch Orange and Blue today. We have these type of discussions here on Denver Sports Tonight on 104.3 The Fan.
But this is like,
abbreviate that a little.
So Sternad had his shot, and it went incredibly poorly.
I think he's different now. And I'm not the Sternad fan. I'm not saying that you were, but just going back through our conversation, I was like, why'd you draft him? Why'd you draft him?
Well, you drafted him to cover. Here's the thing. His strength at Wake Forest was as a coverage linebacker, not against the run.
You already have Cody Barton.
So does Justin really fit then?
Probably not, and where you need him.
Cody is more of a coverage linebacker.
Yes, whereas Zach Cunningham, when he's ready, he'll be a heat-seeking missile. Whereas, well, we don't really know about Quan, where he's at with his health.
If neither Cunningham nor Alexander are ready, this might be the only shot for Welch Sternad.
Right.
At inside linebacker.
Right. But they'll get the first shot. I firmly believe that.
But are you worried about them against Breece Hall and Braylon Allen? Because I think, with all that we talk about with Aaron Rodgers, I think this is the matchup that has the potential to cause the Broncos the most problems.
Yes, because even if it's in a tight game, they can keep running the ball. It doesn't all have to be about Aaron Rodgers. And Nathaniel Hackett's game plan could be simple. Student body right, student body left with Breece Hall and with your guy, Braylon Allen. It is Denver Sports Tonight. Also a special edition of Orange Blue today. Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason in West Virginia with the Broncos. Are we embedded reporters? Right? Embedded reporters.
At this point, I think so, yeah.
Kind of. All right. I like it. I also like, and you like, we love what we saw from Alex Palczewski. Palcho, a fan favorite, a teammate favorite in this Broncos offensive line. I'll quote Quinn Miners. Hey, if the offensive line can win, the Broncos have a better chance to win. I'm paraphrasing. How do they do that? Up front, let's talk about it coming up next. All right, a little bit long, so let's go like 7 here. All right, and tell me when you're ready.
Let's go.
Welcome back. It is Denver Sports Tonight, also a special edition of Orange and Blue today. Andrew Mason, Cecil Lammey, Denver Broncos, and Palcho, man. Can we call him Palcho? I mean, we're in the locker room, so we're not his teammates. But, man, he was so excited to talk to us last week, and then he played not just a good game, maybe not even just a great game, Mace. Palczewski played an outstanding game against the Buccaneers.
To the point where you say it was kind of a revelation, and the conversation starts happening. Could he play left tackle at some point? Because Garrett Bowles is in his contract year.
Right.
we've talked at times about the cap crunch this team is still under with dead money. It's not going to be as bad with the dead money next year, but you're still navigating it.
Right.
And if you move on from Garrett Bowles, you've also got needs in the draft that you're going to want to address. Does Palczewski show enough to maybe where you give him an audition at the left side? Mike McGlinchey, remember, he restructured his contract.
Right. He's going to be your starter.
He's not going anywhere at right tackle. He's not.
And he's looked good this year, too.
Yeah, he was off to a really good start before he got injured.
Unfortunate injury.
So, and I'll credit Zach Street for pointing out that he expected more from McGlinchey in year 2, thought he was really going to step forward from his performance last year, and it turned out he did for the injury. And I'd expect when he gets back from the sprained knee, he's going to be right back where he was pretty quickly. But it's a question worth asking long term. Have you seen enough from Palczewski in this? And we'll see the starts going forward. I mean, there could be some regression. Teams are going to adjust to him. But if we look at the end of these 4 games, it's likely going to be a 4-game stint for Palczewski.
Sure.
At right tackle. Do you look at it and say, okay, what if we give him a look on the left side? Because there are some skills there.
Well,
and it's not
Kurt's getting a look on the left side.
Well,
could that be Palczewski?
As the extra tackle that you put in. And
yeah.
There was a play last week where he was the extra tackle on the left side next to Bowles. Bowles takes care of the interior defensive lineman just fine. Parrott on the outside, not good.
So that's Palcho,
which led to Bo Nix missing little Jordan Humphrey.
Yes,
because he got hit.
Mm-hmm.
That was on Parrott. Palcho was doing his job.
Yes, and Palcho. Let's point this out as well. They started the game helping him out. Troutman in a little bit. Dulcich with a good block. Greg, we see you, man.
We saw
Don't just look at the box score. Greg Dulcich as a blocker. But then Palcho, as the game went on, they didn't have to. I'm getting chills, dude. They didn't have to give him help.
Strong.
Chills. Thrills.
The thing I can say is that he played with authority. Like sometimes you put somebody out there for their first start and they're a little bit timid. Ooh. They don't attack.
Lots going on, right?
Palcho was attacking off the snap, taking it to the opponent.
The aggressor.
Yes. Mm-hmm. Now the challenge is going to be sterner this week for him.
Very much so.
But if he can build off that, man, they might have something here.
I know.
This guy.
I like it. Not only that, his teammates, every single one, to a man that we've talked to, they just love this guy. And so on Thursday, we talked to Quinn Miners, and of course the topic of Palcho came up. Here's what Quinn had to say.
It was good. I mean, I've worked with Palcho in the past, and it's been great. You know, this is his year 2 in the system, so you know he's quite familiar with what's going on. And, you know, whether it be extra reps, talking in meetings, talking after practice, after meetings of how I think we should attack some certain things and hearing his opinions as well. I think we've been able to work really well together.
I love how he's talking about hearing his opinions. Like, this is another thing is that Alex Palczewski is a high IQ player.
Yes.
And if you're going to succeed on this Broncos offensive line, in a Sean Payton scheme with Zach Streif, Northwestern guy coaching, you've got to be a high IQ player. Mm-hmm. There's no room for dummies in that room.
Palcho picks it up, man. Picks it up quick. He was ready for his opportunity. Very experienced. I believe Joe Lombardi talked about that on Thursday. You know, we talk about Bo Nix in the 61 games. It's 65.
More starts than any other college player.
And chose to be here. He chose to be with the Denver Broncos.
Chose the Broncos.
Yes, that's right. I wonder if he got a Valentine. But he did it because of Zach Streif. You and I both love Zach Streif. What an amazing coach, amazing turnaround this offensive line has had because of Streif's coaching and guidance, teaching moments.
Shared moments.
Shared moments. Yes, we have that a lot on this show. So, yeah, I'm looking forward to this offensive line rising to the challenge this week.
I think so. I'm expecting there are going to be some rough spots, but I think he's going to come through it. It's the old cliche. What do you do when you get knocked down? How quickly do you get back up? I think we're going to see that kind of resilience from Palcho when it happens, and I think we'll see him come back strong. The other thing, of course, you want to help him out. and this is where I come back to what I want to see at running back. I want to see more of Tyler Bidet. Bidet, the most decisive of the Broncos running backs who are active on game days among him, Javonte Williams, Will McLaughlin.
Right.
I think Quinn Miners talked about that, how decisive Bidet was. Let's see more of that. I think that will help the offensive line continue to find its footing. Following a much better game in Tampa than the 2 to start the season.
Right. It is Denver sports tonight. It's also orange and blue today. You hear that sweet Ronnie James Dio from Dante back in the studio. Mace, we've had a good time here in West Virginia.
We have. It's been an interesting week. I think we don't yet know what impact this week is going to have.
Right.
And maybe we won't have a complete idea this game. But maybe a month from now, if we see even if the Broncos lose on Sunday, if we see this team coming together, might point to things like the week of bonding in West Virginia, like John Franklin Myers eating 14 times on the player's off day, like Quinn Miners bringing his bowling ball to the Greenbrier and getting it scratched up because they didn't oil the lanes and he got really frustrated. I mean, come on, you're a premier resort. Step it up, Greenbrier.
Exactly. Come on. But we are here for you. We're also here for you on YouTube. So if you haven't watched Orange Blue today, you love listening to me and Mace, well, guess what? Every day, literally every day on YouTube, we have a show for you during the regular season. A little bit by off time in the off season, I mean we're on 5 days a week.
We take weekends not every weekend though, because we're at the Shrine and we're at the Combine and then we're at the league meetings. Yeah.
Yep. We're everywhere. He's Andrew Mason. I'm Cecil Lammey. Thanks to Dante, the man in the box, saying stay tuned, look out, and stay frosty.